Chuck, it's wonderful to see and talk to you again after our conversation 2 years ago about the legendary Eric Clapton Unplugged album. I'm curious about your connection with John Mayer, because that's why we're having this conversation. I'm curious how you two met, how you got connected. How does something like that go?
Well, there is a little bit of a backstory. You probably know that John was going to the Berklee School of Music in Boston, and I think he'd spent at least a year, maybe longer. An Atlantan musician named Clay Cook was also going to Berklee at the same time. They reached a certain point in their studies that they felt like, okay, we've kind of gone as far as we need to go. Now let's try to go professional. So they both moved to Atlanta, and they were playing small clubs and just getting their career going, beginning to write some songs. And I got a message from him at that time would I play on a song of his. And so I agreed to do it. And I really didn't know who John was at the time. You know, he didn't have the name that he has now. And I didn't know Clay that well. But I did the session. I can't remember what the song was, but I did it and sent it up to them, and they were very appreciative. And all this time goes by, several years, and out of the blue, my manager calls me and says, "Hey, John Mayer's reaching out asking if you'd play on his next record." And of course, that was the Born and Raised record. So, of course, I wanted to do that. And we all gathered at Electric Lady Studios in New York and proceeded to record. And fantastic experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. The first song on the album is Queen of California.
Yes.
The first time you heard that song, were you like, I know this vibe from someplace?
Well, you know, this record, I think, was John trying to go into sort of a folk, Americana sort of vibe. And, you know, I know that he was listening to a lot of Crosby, Stills and Nash and some Joni Mitchell and some artists from that era. And it started to rub off on him, obviously. And so he started to write these songs that had that kind of texture to them. And Queen of California, you know, came up, and I think it certainly wasn't the first song we recorded, but it was the first one on the record. And of course, as you know, it was the single as well. But, you know, the song is about a guy that has a girlfriend and they've broken up, and now the girlfriend is leaving California. And so he's comfortable now staying in California without her being there. You know, that's kind of the thesis of the song. And he wanted to do a video for it, which was cool. And, you know, it was the most amazing video I've ever been involved in. We were at this absolutely huge soundstage in Los Angeles, the biggest indoor facility I've ever been in. It must have been nearly as big as the Pentagon or some of those largest buildings in the world. And so we did the video with one shoot, which included John starting the song in a bedroom and then walking down the street and going into a building and then going to another building, having a full marching band go by, eventually coming into a room where we were playing the song, and then he leaves that. It was this one incredibly long, slow shoot for the whole song. Really interesting. And it was a lot of fun. Yeah. And of course, you know, I must cite the other musicians on the record. Sean Hurley, great bass player. Aaron Sterling, great drummer.
Yeah, great musicians. Yeah, but what I was hinting at, the Midnight Rider vibe of the Queen of California, the song you also played on.
Yeah, maybe a little similarity there, but you know, John certainly, you know, he had decided to go in this direction. There was no doubt about it, and of course, as you know, that carried over into the next one as well, to Paradise Valley.
Yeah, those two albums.
They set a precedent, you know, a certain style for John. And Ed, don't forget that this was the period of time when John had the granuloma on his right next to his vocal cords, and we had recorded the Born and Raised, and he knew he had this thing, and he had to have a surgery to have it taken care of and removed, and he thought it was successful, and so he wanted to tour. As a matter of fact, I did wind up doing one live date with John during that time, and that was for the iHeartRadio celebration that took place in Las Vegas. Great gig, by the way. We were really excited. We had this band, and we were going to take the whole band on tour.
Yeah.
Well, we get into rehearsals in Los Angeles, and the fourth day in, John felt like something wasn't right. He went to a doctor. The doctor said, "I'm sorry, it's back. You're going to have to cancel your whole tour." Wow. You know, what a...
That's a blow.
A blow for him more than anybody, but to all of us as well. But I must say that, you know, John is a man of honor, and so, you know, he made amends to all of us financially. He made sure that we were covered, and I really, really respected that. John's a stand-up guy for doing that kind of thing. But it was a terrible blow. We were so excited to go and to promote Born and Raised, but obviously it just couldn't happen at the time. So what happened, John had this second surgery, and it was successful, but they told John, you can't talk for like a month. You can't, just don't use your voice. It's got to recover. And so he kind of went on this road trip. I think maybe he had someone with him, I can't recall, but they were driving throughout parts of America, and he's just being silent, you know. Finally, he heals up, and he said, you know, I want to do another record, and I want everybody to come to Livingston, Montana, where he has a home and a studio, and that's where we went to do the Paradise Valley.
That was where the Paradise Valley record was recorded.
And we had so much fun there, Ed, because he's got a beautiful house right on one of the bends of the Yellowstone River.
Yeah.
Beautiful setting. The water's rushing by in the backyard. And so we all got canoes and kayaks, and we went out and had so much fun, you know, on the river and spending time and going to a restaurant here and there during the process. And then
you can hear that on that record. It has a lot of joie de vivre, as they say in French.
Yes.
That's what you can hear. And that's a little bit different than when you compare it to Born and Raised, because it's a little bit of a... It's a darker... Maybe it was his darkest record up to date, because you can feel like it's a man who has been beaten down, maybe even a little bit by himself.
Yes.
But he was trying to get up. How did that feel during the sessions?
Well, you're right, Ed. I think all the folks out there would remember the unfortunate interview that he did with Playboy magazine. And I think probably he was under some substance abuse or something, and he was just spurting out all these things that he should have just kept to himself, you know. It was a very unfortunate interview, and it did some damage to his career, I think, especially in the eyes of a lot of his fans. You know, they were. I
think especially in the States, because in Europe, it wasn't all that bad.
That big a deal, but it was here, and so your point is well taken. You know, I think he felt a little embarrassed and a little beat up and a little, you know, downtrodden by that interview and that whole experience. And I think he felt like, hey, listen, I got to come back. I got to come back. And come back he did with those two records.
Hey, sorry dat ik even stoor, maar dit najaar sta ik in het theater. We gaan een ode brengen aan John Mayer, gitaarman met 3. John Mayer, de gitaarheld van nu. Misschien wel de allerlaatste gitaarheld zoals wij die kennen. Wie zal het zeggen? Die vraag die staat centraal in deze theatervoorstelling. En ik hoop dat je komt kijken. Het wordt echt te gek. Ik neem een hele band mee. Hoe dat klinkt, kan je een klein stukje laten horen. heb er in ieder geval onwijs veel zin in. Ik hoop je te zien dit najaar. Alle data vind je op struijlaart.nl/tour. Snel terug naar het interview. Let's go back to the sessions of Born and Raised. They were all recorded in Electric Ladyland, right?
Yes.
And how did that go? Because the producer, Don Was. What kind of producer is Don Was?
Well, as you know, Ed, Don did a lot of the Rolling Stone records that I played on. And I got to know Don very, very well, personally as well as professionally. And John knew this, and so John actually came to me and he said, Chuck, I've been thinking about using Don Was as a producer. You've worked with him, what are your impressions? Do you think he would do a good job? And I said, yeah, man, I think he would. Don is a very good listener. He absorbs the music and, assesses everything. He's not the kind of producer that does a lot of dictation, you need to change this, you need to do that. He's not heavy-handed. But he does make good suggestions, and he's very keen to get good takes, to get the very best take possible for each song.
Yeah. And
so I thought he did an excellent job with John, and I think John was very, very comfortable with Don on that project.
And how did the recordings go? Were you guys like taping it together from from start to finish, and then going in for overdubs, or?
Yeah, for the most part, I must mention Chad Franskowiak, who was a great engineer. I'm not sure he's still working with John now.
No,
but
I'm not sure too, but he was there from the beginning.
Yes, from the very beginning. And so he and John were kind of, joined at the hip. They worked together so much, and Chad was a great guy and an excellent engineer. So between Chad, Don Was, John, myself, and of course I mentioned Sean Hurley, the bass player, and Aaron Sterling, the drummer, and that was the core band for the basic tracks of the sessions. I don't think we did a whole lot of overdubbing during that period. There might have been a one or two guitar parts that John, hey, I want to try this, and he would go out and try it. But there wasn't like we were bringing in other instruments and that we were adding very much to it. It's a pretty basic album anyway, as it is.
Yeah.
It's not an overly produced record by any means.
Yeah, and the role of the keys, how would you describe your role as a keyboard player?
Well, it certainly wasn't hey, Chuck, play a bunch of solos. It was nothing like that. It was really, hey, Chuck, add some color. What do you think this song should have? Should it have some organ? Should it have some piano or a different kind of keyboard? John is so interesting because when he records, at least when I recorded with him, he has in the studio all of these instruments, okay? He's got every kind of keyboard you can think of, clavinets and Wurlitzers and Fender Rhodes and other instruments. And another thing that he keeps on hand, which I found fascinating, is a old manual typewriter. Not an electric typewriter, not a computer, but an old manual typewriter. And I said, John, what's up with that? And he said, well, man, when I'm writing lyrics, if I do it in other ways, I'm kind of automatically editing my own thoughts. But if I'm typing on this old typewriter, I'm just, flowing, and I'm not interrupting my own thought process. I thought that was pretty interesting.
The songs. Let's zoom in on a couple of songs, because I have a couple of favorites. Like If I Ever Get Around to Living.
Yes.
That song.
You mentioned earlier getting back up after being sort of beaten down, and I think that song has a lot to do with that theme.
Yeah, and your keyboard parts in that song, it was like, how do you say, glued together with the guitar at some points.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. John was kind enough to to make an appearance in my own documentary, maybe that you have seen, called The Tree Man. And he says a very lovely thing about my playing. He says that I'm always playing a melody and trying to find, a melody within a melody. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that's what you're referring to about the way the two of us kind of wove together.
Yeah.
You know, he was playing his melody and I was playing mine, and they intertwined. Hopefully, in a good way, I hope.
Yeah. And before I forget, I read somewhere and I heard that David Crosby and Mr. Nash himself, they did backing vocals on Born and Raised. Was that during the same session or was that afterwards?
That was afterwards. You know, we cut all the basic tracks at Electric Lady, and as I said earlier, they were basic tracks. We didn't do a lot of overdubbing, and that gave John a lot of time to listen to the material, to think about, you know, what can I do to make it better. Take a break from it, right? Mm-hmm. Take the files to California, and that's where most all the overdubs took place.
If you have to pick one favorite song of the album, what would that be?
You know, the one about the submarine.
Bold Grace.
Yes. I mean, it's such a strange and charming little song, and I'm not playing on it, but it's just so different, and the whole storyline is kind of wacky, you know?
Yeah.
But I thought it was so cool, you know? I mean, how do you come up with an idea for a song for a guy that builds a submarine, you know?
Yeah.
But another favorite of mine that I am on, and that was one of the singles, is Something Like Olivia. I think that's a really interesting way of talking about trying to find a girl, you know. Olivia was spoken for, right? But he wants something like Olivia. It was a really interesting theme, if you will.
I also saw that, John, I think you invited John to play with the Stones in 2013. It was around the same time. How did that go?
Oh, fantastic. You know, John can play anything. Not to get too far off track, but I don't know if you've ever seen the video of Leon Russell when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And he did his version of the great Song for You. And the only other musician playing was John. It was just Leon, Russell, and John. Oh, my God. That's one of the most moving performances I've ever seen in my life, you know. So the point is, John can play with anybody. And we have become good friends through the association of doing these two records, spending time together, hanging out together. And a Stones tour came up. And Mick and Keith, they're always open to have guest artists. Right? I mean, we've had everybody from Taylor Swift to, Gary Clark Jr. and all kind of. We have guests all the time. So knowing this, I said to Mick, I said, "Hey, man, you know, John's a killer guitar player as well as a great songwriter and singer, but he could really be a wonderful guest." So I think twice he came out and sat in with us during that time. And
it was
beautiful. It was really great.
Such amazing tone. I just watched it the other day. I was like, I'm totally now in the rabbit hole of like guitar effects. Like, do I put the Klon before the TS10? Or you know, I'm in that rabbit hole right now. It's like, what did he do?
He did have quite an effects pedal board going on, you know, during the time that I worked with him. He had all kind of gadgets and gizmos, Ed.
Yeah, the man knows his way around the pedal board.
He does.
From your perspective, how did fans and the music industry respond to like the release of Born and Raised? Did you think that it helped him to restore his relationship with his audience?
I think it very much did, especially to go in that kind of a direction. It's a rather soft direction, right? He wasn't playing hard and heavy guitar, which he can do whenever he wants. But I thought it was a really interesting direction for him to go in. I think it was pleasant. The fans respected the music that he was producing. The songs were really, really great songs, you know, and treated properly, treated sort of gently, the production aspect, the mixing. So I think it helped his comeback to a great degree. And interestingly, during that time period, he was also expressing his interest in the Grateful Dead and Jerry Garcia's guitar playing and the Grateful Dead's music as a whole. And so sometimes in the studio, we would just have these jams, right, as we all do. And he would go off in that direction, and we'd do these long wandering up and down and get fast and then slow, very much like the Grateful Dead. And so it did not surprise me when he became friends with Bob Weir, which obviously led to an invitation to come into Dead and Company. Yeah. And, I know that a lot of Grateful Dead fans were going, what? John Mayer?
John, your body is a wonderland. Mayer?
Yeah, exactly. What? And he won them over, but here's the thing, Ed. He went into the studio with Chad, his engineer, when he had the invitation and just shut the world off. And he and Chad would spend hours every day going through the whole Grateful Dead catalog, playing to the recordings and learning them and getting it down. He worked hard for that job. He worked really, really hard for it. And he won. He won the fans over, as it should have been. So congratulations, John. But, I think he's very responsible for bringing the interest of Grateful Dead music back through Dead and Company. And now, as I understand it, he actually owns the controlling interest of the name Dead and Company.
Serious?
I read that, so, he hasn't told me that personally, but I read it in a news report, so I found, wow, that's interesting.
John, let us know if you're listening, if that is true. Fact check it for us. Again, Chuck, thank you very much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. And your stories, because these are the stories people like. I like them. These are the stories no one knows. And that's good.
Well, I'm happy to participate. Thank you for inviting me. And thank you also, Ed, for shining a light on John and these two particular albums that I think were very important recordings for his career. So thanks, man.
Thank you, Chuck.